My college thesis explored quantum physics, an ancient Jewish mystic text, and John Milton, a 17th century poet. Because of my focus on creative writing, I got to write a creative thesis, which was a 40-page epic poem, some of which I'm going to share with you tonight. So the poem is a prequel to Paradise Lost. It's a creation myth, and it explores the potential events of what happened before God created the world. And in it, I challenge the assumption that the creation myth genre presents that there's one creator, partly as a literary exercise and also because I'm a deep believer in collaboration. So this is John Milton and William Blake, an 18th century painter whose work you'll see tonight. And he was also deeply inspired by Milton, and arguably both men were feminist and devout, yet rebellious against institutional religion. The prologue. Who's to say the moon is a woman just because there's a man in her? Muse can't say. This story is too old. Older than that other story about the ones who walked to move the suns and munch their manioc roots, or the one about ribs and clay and words. Older than how the elephant got its trunk and other such wonders and woes of the cosmos. Older than yellow stars in a blue wash whispering their influence. Older than apples. Older than blind men and their dreams. This story, the story which comes before all other stories, which cling to the steel metronome of myth, this little ditty let go, freed from the clutches of muse law, like the purpose of art is to stop time. Myth was once defined as narrative that wrests order from chaos. This is the ancestor of myth, the storyteller's inhalation. As you might be able to hear, this poem is free verse. It's not written in meter. And I did that because chaos is one of my lead characters, and also because iambic pentameter is really hard to write. So this next section is from book 1 and explores Eve's skepticism. That day, the day after dinner, Adam sat bare-backed and propped by the trunk of an old sassafras. He flared his nostril to the root beer of its bark. He knit rings of love in dandelion, while she lay, creamy back in wet grass, counting the leaves as they blushed and broke free. And clumps of nest were left cold and naked in the gaunt palm of branches above, while a thought tiptoed into their autumnal patch of Eden. Eve received them with ease, like those fallen leaves, and they conjured up memories of an angel and dinner and men's murmur. The question settled there. Little nesting notions laid their eggs in the soft gray gathers of her brain. So in Paradise Lost, Adam had questions, and they were answered by Raphael, and in Before Paradise, Lilith helped answer some of Eve's questions. Their conversation helped drive the narrative in the poem, and she introduces Eve to God's creators, light and chaos. This next poem is about them. There was a way it always was, the epic of a holy light all consumed in ember dreams. Sunlit floods fill the shadows, fire spit spores adrift in the dim. She lived a life set glistening. All was infected by the sun flecks of her genetics. And in her shadow stood the hazy head of chaos. She reigned in his grief and shined so hard it hurt. With melancholy serving at his side, he suffered, sick and unoriginal. And this is the tango beat. This is the tango of reciprocals in a predicament of reciprocation. Writing about light and chaos was challenging because their story took place before time and space. So to keep us from diving too deep into the madness, I'm going to skip ahead to a chapter titled Birth, in which a newborn God coughs up the Big Bang. He snored a long rasp, to clear his throat of all that sticky universe, and spewed up a thimbleful of cork soup quagmire, and in this mess of some bubbles sat a marble on a hill, blistering, and small, and in it were 1,000 white-hot knots where urns shatter and remold when fairy tales are inhaled and retold, light spinning, dark splitting, invisible inside like the wings of hummingbird flight, in which universes freeze, dreams melt, creatures steam. It lay in a lace sack of space-time silk, tanned and taut for the moon to beat on this wide drum of living, while the sun stirred the Big Bang broth. And in it, time was concentric like north. In it lies the topography of gravity, a cascade of frowning mounds. And after the marble rolled and grew, with a mad rush of ideas clamoring about its belly, crashing and swerving and inspiration and obliteration, the fury of young philosophies stoked the astral stove and the world swelled. The universe was once opaque, so thick with ideas God couldn't see a thing through it. So educators often use different kinds of thinking to assess student knowledge, from the most simple or foundational remembering to the highest creating. And in this poem, I got to do more than just learn about Milton. I got to define my relationship with spirituality and history and poetry because I got to create. So I wanted to leave you with this thought that if you are hoping to cultivate deep understanding, don't just research and report, but create.